Hi everyone, Eric here from Whose Turn Board Games, and today we're going to be covering the board game Power Grid. Now it's a 2 to 6 player game, and in this particular game you take the role of a power company, surprise, and you attempt to power as many cities as you can in order to gain money in order to power more cities. Very simple concept, deceptively difficult game to get. In order to power the power plants, you need to have certain resources that your power plants use, and you need to buy those each round with the money that you've acquired. This game is notorious for something that's called analysis paralysis, where you just take about 2 to 3 minutes thinking about what's the best move. It does take a little bit longer because of that, and it is a pretty steep learning curve, so just be aware it is a little more advanced game. First thing to notice that there are two sides of the board. The first side is actually Germany, because this game was, I think, made from people who are from Germany. And the second one does contain the US. Now there are a set number of little cheat sheets. There's going to be 6, one for each player, and one side does show the money that you get for each city that you control, as well as the general rules for everything, so each player will get one of them. Should be noted, it's up to 6 players. I will just be setting it up as if it was a 2-player game, just due to space, mainly. And once each player has chosen their color, they go ahead and take one of their houses and place it up here on the top right track. It's going to have up to numbers 1 through 21, and they'll just kind of put them where the housing starts at the beginning. They also take one of their houses and place it over here by the light bulb for now. Next you're going to set up the resources, and the resources, there's a couple of different ones. I will explain them all here real quick. The first one I'm going to explain is the uranium. That's going to be the small red one, not to be confused with the small red house that is the red player. You only put 2 out on the board on numbers 16 and 14. Up next is going to be the garbage, represented by the yellow cylinders. You place 3 garbage on the spots designated on the numbers 8 and 7. And same thing with the uranium, keep the rest accessible just because you will be putting more on the board each turn. Up next is oil, represented by the black cylinders, and you are going to be putting 3 oil on numbers 3 all the way through 8 in the middle row. The last resource we'll be putting out is going to be coal. You put out every single piece of coal, numbers 1 through 8, and that'll be all of the coal. Up next, each player will get 50 electro. It's what the currency is in the game, and you can do any denominations you'd like. I would recommend not giving them each the $50 bill because you will be spending it pretty much the whole time. So however you'd like to do it overall, but I'd recommend smaller denominations. You do want to keep the rest of the money off to the side and easily accessible. Generally want to designate one of the players as the banker, so to speak, like another game that uses fun colored money like this. As such, I'll be sitting off to the side. Up next, you are going to find the power plant stack of cards with this background, and you are going to get out the numbers 3 through 10 and set them off to the side. You are also going to be looking for numbers 13 in the number 3 step. Set those 2 off to the side. What you're going to do for the other numbered ones is you're going to set them up in 2 piles. The first pile is going to have numbers 3 through 6 on the uppermost section. This is called the power plant market. This is going to be where you're able to actually purchase the power plants and are able to do this for the first 2 steps of the game. The second section is going to be the numbers 7 through 10, and this is going to be called the futures market. These are not purchasable until step 3, and as such, when they're out here, they just show you what is going to be coming up. Now after you've shuffled the power plant deck, you're going to want to take out a set number of cards based on the number of people playing. For a 2 to 3 player game, you take out 8 cards randomly and set them back in the box. They will not be used for the game. They are completely removed from the game. As such, if there are 4 players playing, you only remove 4 power plants from the deck and again return them to the box. If there are 5 more players, you remove no cards and continue on with the next step, which is going to be taking the number 13 power plant, putting it on top of the deck, as well as taking the number 3 step and putting it on the bottom of the deck. And that's going to be set up. Once the game has set up, the game continues over the course of 3 separate steps. Sometimes the 3rd step does not actually happen, but it does continue for a little bit. Depending on the number of players, it depends on the number of cities you need to power in the upper right-hand corner. With a 2-player game, you need to be able to connect 21 cities in your grid in order for the game to end. In a 3 and 4-player game, it is 17 cities. In a 5-player game, it's 15, and in a 4-player game, it's 14. For the first phase, it's going to be determined player order. The player with the most number of cities in their network is going to be the first player, and then it continues on to the next number of cities, and so on and so forth. For the first round, you just randomly select who's going to go first. Flip a coin, draw lots, roll dice, whatever you'd like to do. If there is a tie for the number of cities that are connected, then you go off of whoever has the highest number of power plants in their power plant grid. Phase 2, auctioning power plants. For phase 2, the first player starts off by looking at all the power plants on the actual current market, which is again the top row, and places a bid on one of them. In order to bid on one of them, you need to pay the dollar amount on the card itself, and the dollar amount starts for whatever number it is. So for example, number 5 here would be 5 electro. It then goes in a clockwise order, and each player can choose to outbid if they so choose to, if they want that power plant. So in this instance, blue could choose to say, I will pay 6 for number 5. It continues until all but one player has passed, and then they pay whatever the agreed upon number is to the bank. The power plants then reset. So you take the 4 lowest costing power plants and set them in the top section. So for this instance, number 7 will always go move to the top first. You then flip up to make it so you have 8 total cards. This continues until every single player has chosen to either buy a power plant or pass. Players can pass and buy no power plants if they so choose. However, for the first round, every player must buy at least 1 power plant. Now I'll go over a brief explanation of what the power plant does, as well as what all the numbers mean. So, as stated before, the number here is the number of power plant in the game. It is the minimum number that must be auctioned for the power plant. The bottom section shows what resources they take. The black obviously is going to be coal, the barrel is going to be oil. The yellow ones show garbage, the red one is uranium. Green ones cost no resource to play, but generally only power a few less cities, so just a heads up there. The last thing is going to be the house with a number on it. That shows the number of cities that this particular power plant can power. So number 5 can only power 1 city. Once every player has chosen to buy a power plant or pass on them, then it continues to the next phase, which is going to be buying the resources. For buying the resources, the turn order goes in reverse order. So the last player is the first person to buy resources. In this instance, blue is second, so they will be going first to buy resources. When buying resources, the cost of said resource is going to be the number with the resource is that you're purchasing it from. So for this instance, blue would be the first one to buy resources, and they could take up to double what their number of power plants can have. Each barrel of oil would cost 3 while on this section, 4 while on this section, 5 on here, and so on. Once all players have purchased the resources, it then continues on to the building phase. Phase 4, building. Building is also done in reverse turn order, as what is indicated on the top left of the map. So in this instance, blue will continue to go first. They will choose any city on the board, and they will place a house on there showing that they have made a connection. It should be noted that for the very first connection you make in any city, it costs you 10 electro in order to do so. The bigger numbers that connect the city are how much you have to pay for the connecting costs. So in order to go from Oklahoma City to Santa Fe, they would have to pay 10 to establish in that city, as well as 15 for connecting to that city. So it would cost them a total of 25 electro. It should be noted that while in step 1 of the game, you can only have 1 person in each city until you hit step 2. You can continue to build cities as long as you'd like. You can use as much money as you'd like to use. You can only power as many cities as you have for power plants that show that many. So for this instance, as I've been saying, blue can only power 2 cities, so they should only really connect 2 cities total. They can choose to connect more if they'd like to, if they have the funds, but ultimately they're only going to get money for how many cities they have powered. Only a set number of colors can be used depending on the number of players. For a 2 and 3 player game, only 2 colors can have potential cities in them. If this were the case here, red, purple, and blue have been used. They have cities taken. Yellow, brown, and green cannot be used at all for the rest of the game. In a 3-player game, again, only 3 territories can be used. In a 4-player game, it's 4, 5, 5, and 6, 6. Once all players have taken their turns building their cities, they then go to the bureaucracy phase. For the bureaucracy phase, you power your cities and you collect money based on the number of your power. So for this instance, yellow will only power 1 because they only have the ability to power 1. You then discard any resources on your power plant to power them back to the supply. You do not put them back to the bottom of the board. Blue will power 2 cities, and they will get money according to that, how many they have powered. Again, refer to the back of the card to see how much you get. No matter what, you'll get 10 electro every single turn, but you want to power as many as you can. The more cities you have powered, the better rate you get. Once all players have collected their money from the bureaucracy phase, you then resupply the resource market at the bottom of the board. I would personally refer to the back of the instruction manual as it has the numbers that should be going on there based on the step you are on. So for a 2-player game on step 1, you would put back in 3 coal if there are any from the supply. Same with oil, you put 2 oil back, you add 1 garbage, you add 1 uranium. You always add it to the highest denomination on the board that's available, and you continue your way down. And I said to reference that because it's different on what step you're on and the number of players you have, and it's impossible to really memorize. So just keep that handy, just so that way you can know how many resources to put back onto the board. Last thing you do on the bureaucracy phase is going to be reset the power grid market. So you take the highest number power plant that's available on the futures market, and you put it at the bottom of the deck. You then draw the next one on the top and readjust as so. It's been refilled, the highest one's been put in the bottom, and now starts over with phase 1. It should be noted that as you're building connections for your cities, you should be constantly updating the number of cities that you've connected. And those are the phases. You continue to go through phases 1 through 5 as such, adjusting accordingly until you get to step 2. Step 2 is entered when one player, doesn't matter who, if multiple hit it, that's fine, has built their 7th city. Once that happens, and you get to the bureaucracy phase, phase 5, you take the lowest number power plant that's showing on the board and remove it from the game. Missed. You then immediately replace it with the top deck and adjust accordingly. When phase 2 is entered, you can then have multiple people on the same city. As you saw, there are going to be 10, 15, and 20 numbers on each city. Up to 3 people can be in one city at a time, no more. In order to have a second player connect to a city, you have to pay that additional cost. So on top of the connection fee, you also need to pay, instead of $10, 15 electro. The game then continues to go on through the normal phases as normal. You do look at the step 2 for setting up the resources instead of the step 1 phase, and that's about the only real difference. Game continues until the step 3 card is flipped on the power plant grid when you're purchasing power plants. When that happens, you immediately enter step 3. Now, how step 3 is entered does kind of change how you actually play it. If it's drawn during the auction phase for the power plants, let's say number 4 went out, which this is impossible, but hey, whatever. This would be treated as the highest number power plant and put in the futures market. You then continue as normal until it's all said and done. Once everyone has passed or bought power plants, you then remove the lowest and the step 3 from the game. Put them back to the box, they're not going to be used again. You also then shuffle the remaining cards for the power plant deck. This is because as you've been playing in step 1 and step 2, you've been taking the highest costing power plants and putting them at the bottom of the deck, so now you want to shuffle them up because it's basically been reset up again. Now in the future, whenever purchasing power plants, there is no longer a futures market. You can do both the top and the bottom row, whatever you'd like to purchase. That's perfectly fine. If it's drawn in the bureaucracy phase, when you're flipping up the power plant in replace for the largest one, you then remove it from the game as well as the lowest one, and the next round the power plants will just be purchasable from entirely. Again, shuffle the deck and it's good to go from there. The only other difference for step 3 is that when you get to the bureaucracy phase, you remove the lowest power plant from the game, putting it back in the box and replacing it with a new one. Now, as stated, the game continues until someone hits a set number of cities depending on the number of players you were playing with. When that happens, the game ends at the end of the bureaucracy phase. You then tally up whoever has powered the most cities. They can get 21 connections overall, but they don't have to power them all. They can only power 19. That's perfectly fine. It has happened where the person who has ended the game has not won the game. So do be aware of that you want to try to be powering cities as you continue to grow with your connections, because that is how you win the game, is powering the most cities, not having the most connections. Now, if there's a tie for the most cities powered, you go off of the number of money that they have, and whoever has the most wins. If there's still a tie, it's going to be the most cities in their connections overall. If there's still a tie, congratulations, play again. And that's Power Grid. So yeah, it's definitely a pretty advanced game. There's a lot going on with it, and it's definitely one of our favorites in our group. We love playing it. It just, the biggest complaint I have against it is how much analysis paralysis that can happen in it and how long it can take because of it. So definitely keep that in mind when you're playing it. It is definitely a recommendation from us. We love it so much. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a like. If you want to subscribe and follow us on this board game journey, go right ahead and hit the subscribe button. What do you like about the game? Have you played it before? Do you like playing with the American version or the German version? We've never played actually with the German board now that I think about it, but it's such a fun game. We really, really enjoy it. And what about you? Do you constantly run into the analysis paralysis? Have you tried it? What do you do to kind of combat that? Do you sort of do a shot clock kind of thing, or leave a comment down below and let us know. Thank you all for watching. I've been Eric, and until next time, whose turn?
Yours!